Good day, everybody. It's me again. I have an outline, so hopefully this will be a little bit quicker. But, all right, let's talk about communication for a second because there are much better ways to go about communicating with people than what we've learned in terms of schooling and your parents, and there are people that believe that children should be seen, not heard, or don't interrupt your elders, and there's so many rules that really don't make sense. Or one that's good is that don't listen to respond, listen to understand. Yeah, for the most part, but not always. So let's just get down to this. There's a way to explain what you want without demanding what you want. So here's an example, and I'm going to tell you a very intimate, private story, and where all this comes from. So if you go and tell in this case, your significant other, hey, I don't like when people talk to me through the door when I'm taking a shit. Okay. That might be a little, understanding, like, okay, yeah, I get that. But there are people who don't really understand that. I've been with people who want to have full-on conversations. Instead of just demanding something, saying, I demand that this happens. I told my girl why. When I was a kid in public school, I was looking for a bathroom. It was like maybe first grade, right? And I went down to the bathroom where near the cafeteria, the first floor, instead of the one that was up there because it was occupied and I really had to poop. So I went down there. It was just after lunch where kids should be back in class and everything. It's a large one. It has a lot of stalls because it's used more often. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to do my business. And I told her this story. I said, what happened was that a group of like 3 kids came in, saw that somebody was pooping, and these were a few years older, and they kicked in the door and they started pointing at me and laughing at me. And I'm stuck. I couldn't do anything about it. I'm there. I'm mid-poop. And it was a little traumatizing. Now, I'm an adult, and I understand that that doesn't always happen. I'm an adult now, and I understand that I can just stop what I'm doing, pull my pants up, punch him in the face if I wanted to. But this has stayed with me for a very, very long time, to the point where I really don't want to poop in public. I really try everything I can not to, as well as not have conversations between the door, because it reminds me that there's other people on the outside of that door, outside of that partition, that keeps me safe. So I don't like it. It sort of brings me back to that. Now, I could have explained to her, I don't like it, don't ever do it. If you do it, there's a fight, an argument, whatever. Or I can explain the reason why that's a problem for me. And in explaining that, now she has an understanding rather than me demanding something. That's important. She's told me a lot of things about her life and why she feels ways about certain things, rather than I don't like this or I like that. And for us to really understand each other, I'm not trying to say go tell everybody every traumatizing story that you have. But if you want to get a point across, it's much more effective to explain why that is rather than demand something. So that's the first part. The other thing is, in speaking, in having conversations, my girl is expressed that in her other relationships, there was a lot of times where she didn't feel appreciated, that there was no appreciation for the things that she did, and she was really lacking in that. And so now I understand that, and I try to do more of that in this relationship, so that She feels appreciated, and I'm sure she does feel appreciated, but it's good to actually say that out loud, to actually hear. You know, it's reassuring, and we should do that for each other. We should reassure each other, especially if somebody's expressed, "Hey, I have a lack of this, a lack of confidence, a lack of social skills. I have a problem speaking in public situations or public speaking in general, standing on a podium." There's ways to go about that. That we can talk to each other. We can it doesn't have to be a significant other. We can communicate with each other and understand each other a little better. And that's really where it comes down to, is the understanding. Now, let me get into a problem that I have. There's a double standard that I have. The way that men and women express emotion and sensitivity. So you've got women who say that men should be more in tune with their feelings and express their feelings. But then when they do, they're called pussies. Women can, I'm not saying they all do, but they can cry at the drop of a hat. And men are called pussies if they express something that leads to tears. Realistically, both should express these feelings, whatever feelings they're having, even if they're feelings that may lead to a sadness or a couple tears, more rationally than they do. If a man is trying to express himself correctly and a few tears come out, that's okay. But it's learning how to express these feelings. I'm angry at such and such and such. I'm disappointed at such and such. I'm frustrated at whatever. Yeah, there's more to it. There's more explanation to it. For example, I'm frustrated that every time that I try to do something, it keeps failing. I feel like I'm a failure because the task that I'm trying to do keeps coming up as a failure. Now, we talk about it and say, you are not a failure. You might not be accomplishing this task, or there might be a lot of things coming at you that are making this task harder. But if you do this or that, or maybe we look at a different way of approaching this or whatever, then hopefully you won't feel that way, because even though the action is telling you that you are a failure, that doesn't mean that you as a person are a failure. That is a valid way to express your emotion and not have the emotion overtake you in expressing your emotion and finding solutions for that problem. Men and women feel the feeling of being overwhelmed differently. And if us men can understand that about women in a general sense, and women can understand that in a general sense, then we can tackle these problems together with an open mind. Like the men, they feel overwhelmed and they tend to close up. They tend to revert, look inward, and try to deal with that. And women, again, just generalities, are looking for outside sources when they're overwhelmed. So as a man, you have to see that in your significant other, in your sister, in your mom, in your coworker, whatever, that a female is going to look for outside validation when they feel overwhelmed, outside help. And as women, it would be wonderful if you understood that men internalize their feeling of overwhelm, the feeling of being overwhelmed, to the point where it just builds up and it explodes. That's not healthy. I'm not saying it's healthy, but it's really good to recognize these things so that you could say, hey, let's take a step back for a minute. Maybe we can talk about things and you can express what's going on and why you're feeling overwhelmed, and what we can do to work that out. That is much more proper communication. Men, we need to work on that too. But we also have to understand that our gender deals with it differently. So we have to recognize the other gender and how they deal with it, and work around that as well. We really need to understand that, for the most part, generally 80% of the time, men and women process these types of things differently. And it's easy for a guy to deal with a guy, and it's easier for a girl to deal with a girl. But it's difficult for us to understand what the other gender is going through because we have no clue. We don't understand that that's how they process it. It might not be a great way of doing that. I'm saying internalizing and being a powder keg is not good, but at least recognizing those things and then coming about it properly is going to minimize arguments, minimize fights, and get to the solution much faster and easier. Because nobody can read minds. Like, there's no way that I can read my girl's mind and she's frustrated. I know exactly what to do and exactly what to say. And there's no way that a woman's going to read a guy's mind and say, he's internalizing. We need to express ourselves. We need to be able to communicate those types of things in a much more rational fashion, in a much more helpful fashion. You know, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and my girl asks what's wrong and I yell at her, I'm not expressing that in a proper fashion. I'm not expressing that the best way that I can. And conversely, if I ask her what she goes, nothing. That's not, first of all, she doesn't do that. Let me just say that she's going to watch this. We have wonderful communication. I love it. And it makes everything so much easier because we can recognize things in each other and we try to work with what we have in terms of what's that other person going through, how do they process certain things. She doesn't process things like I do. She does not. And I understand at least that much so that I can approach the situation differently than I would approach it for myself. So it's really important to be able to express that to your significant other, to a coworker that you're dealing with, instead of necessarily saying, I think that's a dumb idea. You know, you can go about that and say, okay, let's look at this outside. Does this have profit? Does this have efficiency? No, and you break it down differently than you go, that's stupid. Because now you're invalidating that person. And you're not teaching them anything. If they are going through something and they're going through it just the wrong way, let me explain it this way. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And many of them are effective. But if you try to skin a cat with a spoon, somebody's going to turn to you and be like, dude, there's a much easier way to do that. Let's do that instead of saying, what are you, fucking stupid? Let's do that. If somebody's doing it just completely wrong, let's say, hey, so I have a little bit of experience in such and such. This is really not going to be helpful for the outcome that you're looking for. Why can't we speak like that to each other? It's so much easier, so much more helpful. It doesn't put anything on nobody on the defensive way. There's no attacking. There's more like, hey, there's a problem here, and I'm willing to express certain things correctly so that we can come to a resolution to this problem. Why can't we talk like that? Everything is just emotionally driven when it comes to communication. That's stupid. Are you even thinking? And honestly, guys, girls, when you're wrong about a situation, just look at it that way. You were wrong about a situation. Nobody's perfect. We're all human. It's okay to be wrong. It's more important to learn from that, though. And that's what I'm trying to express here. There's so many different wrong ways of communicating with each other in every type of relationship and interpersonal relationships. And there's better ways. There's more efficient ways. And doing it wrong doesn't make you a bad person. Continuing to do it wrong after you have the opportunity to learn just makes you an asshole. And in terms of having an argument, I really do think that it's very important to take the time to separate, think, and then revisit. So give each other some time to cure down. Again, not necessarily in romantic relationships. This works for everything. If I'm going to have an argument with something with my sister, which I actually had a bit of an argument with my sister about certain things, and we talked about that and how we felt about that. And then I think it was like a week and a half later, she said, hey, listen, about that subject, I feel this way. And I had some time to think about it. And I said, so did I. And I feel this way. And I think we expressed that. Now we expressed it better because we had time to try to formulate how we wanted to bring that out from our brains to our mouths, and so that we have a better understanding of each other. And we did have a better understanding of each other in that situation. And that was wonderful. Why can't we do that more? And in terms of people always wanting to be right and wrong and this and that, doesn't really help really anything. We really should be going into communication and situations with more understanding and empathy. And I say empathy because, again, I have certain ways of going about things and certain ways of thinking about things, and not everybody has that way of thinking. So there have been lots of times where Victoria's like, why don't you look at it this way? And I'm like, oh, my brain doesn't, I had a situation where I was like, look, my brain doesn't go there that way because when I was growing up, such and such, so I think such and such. And now I haven't experienced that. Now that I have experienced that, I'm going to take what you said into account because I didn't really notice that I was doing that. I didn't really notice that my own bias was stopping me from seeing the situation as it is and seeing it much differently in a different perspective. Perspective is super important because you have one perspective and somebody has another perspective. That doesn't mean that your perspective is wrong. Like, just simply, if I go, where are we? If I go, oh, you see that color right there? That's blue. And a colorblind man might say that's gray. Who's wrong? Nobody. Nobody in that situation is wrong because one can't grasp the concept of the perspective of the other person. Doesn't mean that they're wrong for having that perspective. Some perspectives are just way out there, way off the wall. And we really should work towards trying to see things differently and be the best people that we can be ourselves. This is part of why I put these videos up. So just because somebody sees something different than you doesn't mean that they're wrong. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes you're wrong. You have to be able to change your perspective to be able to see those things and open up your mind and say, maybe. All right. I hope this helped some people. And we'll just keep going from here eventually. I have many more videos to take care of. I know I've been a little lacking, but we'll get there. Take it easy, y'all.